Brace up for a stormy budget session of Parliament. Despite protests from opposition parties and Anna Hazare, the government will go ahead and table the land acquisition ordinance in the Lok Sabha tomorrow. The President, in his address to both houses, calls for a fruitful session.
The Housing for All scheme is set to get a major push in the budget. The government may hike home loan rebate by over 50% to over 3 lakh rupees. More tax incentives also on the cards. That's an exclusive.
Rahul Gandhi goes on a sabbatical, skips the President's address to Parliament and his planned agitation over the land ordinance. Congress sources say he is upset with the party's old guard.
On street science, markets nosedive in the last hour of trade as volatility haunts the Lal Street. The Sensex ends just below 29,000, shedding over 250 points. The Nifty fails to hold above 8,800.
Relief for the government. Supreme Court allows spectrum auctions to go ahead as planned, but the contention of top telecos over license extension remains open.
In a bid to fast-track pending tax cases, the Supreme Court constitutes a special bench to hear petitions where a huge amount of money is involved. Nearly 11,000 tax cases are currently pending before the Apex Court.
The Delhi police files a second FIR over the alleged case of corporate espionage. Another consultant arrested for allegedly removing official documents from the coal and power ministries.
A new twist to the NSCL scam. The joint MD of the exchange accuses stock brokers of modifying over 3 lakh line codes before the scandal was exposed. Says the modifications amount to over 2,200 crore rupees. That's another exclusive.
Facing charges of money laundering, global banking giant HSBC gets tax summons from the Indian Tax Department, fears significant monetary penalties.
You guys are at the Oscars!
Yeah. We're at the Oscars. Come on, we're excited.
Are there nerves?
Yeah. I mean, a little bit. You know, this is Super Bowl, I guess.
The actor goes to. The Oscar goes to.
The Oscar goes to.
The Oscar goes to.
The Oscar goes to.
The Oscar goes to.
Patricia Arquette.
It's our time to have wage equality once and for all and equal rights for women in the United States of America.
Gloria from Selma.
We know that right now, the struggle for freedom and justice is real.
People with Alzheimer's deserve to be seen so that we can find a cure.
From Patricia Arquette's cracking speech on wage equality to the songwriters of Selma batting for African American rights to Edward Snowden's Oscar moment, the 87th Academy Awards had it all. Good evening and thanks for joining us at India Business Hour. I'm Nayantara Rai, with me Sylvia Padhyay. Sylvia, you know, I woke up early just to get bored by Neil Patrick Harris. I feel all I could think of was, where's Billy Crystal?
Well, he wasn't all that bad, to be fair, but really, you know, bad news for Birdman, beg your pardon, good news for Birdman, which really stole the show. All the top honors going there. However, bad luck for Richard Linklater's 12-year epic saga. Boyhood, just not quite up there.
And even Grand Budapest Hotel, I thought that would, you know, did still get 4 Oscars. But never mind, we'll get to that in a bit. First up, let's tell you what happened on the Lal Street. Late drama on the Lal Street once again. The day started on a strong footing, but then took a turn for worse after lunch. The Sensex broke past 29,000 mark in early trade, but then massive profit booking towards the end took it below that level. Ditto for the Nifty, which surged above 8,800. But guess what? That was also short-lived. Mid-caps also not to be spared. That index going home down by over 1% in trade.
All right, that was the trading action. Let's move on now. Budget season is here and all eyes are on the Parliament, while the railway and the union budget will be presented within this week, garnering support for the government's legislative agenda that includes 8 ordinances and key economic issues will be the biggest challenge for Prime Minister Modi. Rituparna Bhoyer and Ashmit Kumar say that the contentious land ordinance, which is set to be tabled in the Lok Sabha tomorrow, is already giving the government nightmares.
President Pranab Mukherjee kicked off the budget session of Parliament with his address to both houses. In an hour-long speech, the President flagged off the achievements of the Modi government in the last 9 months, including the government's efforts to liberalize sectors like defence and the milestones achieved for some of the government's flagship schemes like the Jan Dhan Yojana.
Pahal for transfer of LPG subsidy has been extended across the country from 1st January 2015. 13.2 crore new bank accounts being opened, 11.5 crores RuPay debit cards being issued.
As the government gets ready to present the budget in the next 5 days, it is working to get the opposition on board to convert the 8 ordinances into legislations. But this is easier said than done. The land acquisition ordinance is facing the stiffest resistance, not just in the Parliament, but also outside, with activist Anna Hazare centering his campaign around it. Opposition parties are not willing to yield on the land ordinance either.
Land acquisition concerned, they have arbitrarily brought an ordinance and they believe only in ordinance but not in the democratic process.
There's a lot of resistance in the country, various organizations and all political parties. I don't think to pass it in Parliament is going to be such a simple affair.
हमारी पार्टी तो शुरू से ही जब ये अध्यादेश लाया गया भूमि अधिग्रहण को लेकर केंद्र की सरकार द्वारा तो तभी से ही हमारी पार्टी इसका विरोध कर रही है.
NDA allies and independent members hope for a breakthrough on some of the less contentious ordinances like the insurance ordinance.
Ordinances are a consequence of lack of parliamentary debate. Right. And any bill, contrarian points of view are allowed if there is a debate allowed. So there is no need for anybody to believe that this bill is the right bill or that bill is the wrong bill.
Government is quite willing to debate that. But let there be a debate in Parliament. Let them not obstruct Parliament.
The government is keeping its fingers crossed.
Lesser disruptions this time, sir?
I hope so.
While the first half of the budget session will focus on the budget, it remains to be seen how PM Modi and his colleagues managed to convince the opposition parties on taking the legislative agenda forward. In New Delhi, with Rituparna Bhoyer, Ashmit Kumar.
And guess what? The land ordinance is set to be tabled tomorrow in Lok Sabha. This even as Anna Hazare will be entering the second day of his protest at the Jantar Mantar. And guess what? Delhi's new Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal all set to throw his might behind Anna's agitation. Kejriwal will be joining Anna tomorrow at Jantar Mantar. The Aam Aadmi Party has termed the land ordinance as anti-farmer and said it's not in favor of democracy.
All right, let's move on now to the upcoming budget, which could bring some major relief for home buyers, given the government's big promise of providing housing for all by 2022. Sources say that budget 2015 could see a hike in the rebate offered on home loans. Nayantara, in fact, has those exclusive details. Nayantara, we know that there's been a lot of talk surrounding making affordable housing a reality. What could the government perhaps have up its sleeve?
Well, the first thing I'm picking up, Sylvie, is that perhaps you're going to see the rebate on home loans being hiked from the current 2 lakh rupees to maybe as high as 3 to 3.5 lakh rupees. That's what certain government sources are indicating. Industry had sought an exemption of almost as high as 5 lakh rupees. But, you know, maybe we're not going to see such a high exemption. But that would, if it does happen even at 3 lakh rupees, it's a 50% increase of the current exemption that we all enjoy at the moment.
So just to clarify, this exemption will apply to all homes and not just the ones that fall under the affordable housing.
This is under direct tax. This is not under housing for all.
Okay.
Now let's talk about housing for all. I understand it was discussed at the cabinet meet last week. We did not see a press release post that, but senior government sources saying it was cleared by cabinet. It's been given an in-principle approval. It's going to be named after Sardar Patel. In fact, 2 crore houses have to be built across the country to ensure there is housing for all by 2022. So therefore, private sector's participation will be needed. Expect from Finance Minister certain SOPs that will be given out. In fact, expect a lot of SOPs for housing and urban development. It is going to be one of the big focus areas of the budget this coming Saturday. I understand from my sources that all the affordable and low-cost housing scheme projects under this scheme could get additional FSI. FSI is floor square index. It basically means you can build taller buildings. And LIC might be encouraged to also lend to developers to make sure there is housing for all by 2022. As we all know, credit offtake is still quite expensive. Maybe the National Housing Bank will be encouraged to give cheaper credit to developers as well. Part of the scheme will also include a national rental mission. Now, what I understand from my sources is that this is going to be targeting migrant workers as well as laborers. Have dormitory-style setups coming up where you can encourage long-term rental lease. It's inspired from the Mumbai chawl, so that is also very much part of this housing mission. The first areas will be coming up perhaps along the river Ganga and Varanasi. That is what I'm understanding from my sources. But companies will be encouraged to participate in this as well. You have a Companies Act which talks about corporate social responsibility, and proceeds from that could also be used for the National Rental Mission.
All right. Well, that's what we're expecting in terms of housing for all and how it might just become a reality.
But the big one, of course, being the tax rebate on home loans outside of housing.
Absolutely. That's where a lot of people will be very interested, of course. Let's move on then to the big political story. The Vice President of the Congress Party was missing from Parliament today. That's right. Rahul Gandhi is on a sabbatical. He will be missing in action throughout the 2-month-long budget session to reportedly contemplate the party's future. Pallavi Ghosh is here with details. Pallavi, is this really a sabbatical, or is Rahul Gandhi sending out a message perhaps to the party's old guard who he's reportedly a little upset with?
Absolutely, and in fact the question which is being asked is that if he really did want that sabbatical, then why not much earlier? I mean, a budget session is crucial because one, of course, it's the budget session, the real budget, the general budget is presented, and secondly, it was his idea to have those protests against the land ordinance on the 25th. He was supposed to lead it. That's what the Congress party did say officially, and he's now going to be missing in action. Well, what we are picking up by way of our Congress sources is that it's a sulking Rahul Gandhi. He's extremely upset. He does want to become the Congress president, but in his own terms. He does not want the old guard to continue. He in fact is believed to have given a list of many of the Congress veterans, many general secretaries, state in charges who he feels should be on their way out and they should not continue. Now, Sonia Gandhi is seen more as a status quo. She wants the status quo to be maintained. She doesn't want to have a complete disregard of that old guard, and that's where the clash is believed to have come between the two, and that's the reason why Rahul Gandhi has in a sense dictated that if you want me as the Congress president, then it has to be on my terms, and so those who want to accept me will have to accept me 100% or they'll have to leave.
Pallavi, if I can just come in there, is this in a sense setting the stage for a possible change of guard in the Congress party? There's been a lot of talk about whether Priyanka is going to be the next one coming in, replacing her brother, and clearly we know the brother's strategy is really not, borne much fruit over the last 1 year. So could this be somehow connected?
But I don't think Priyanka Gandhi is really going to be taking over, because then that in a sense with an admission by the Gandhi family that Rahul Gandhi has completely failed. But I think it's a churning out process, so either which way we'll have to wait and watch for 10th of April where that big AICC session is expected to be held in Bangalore, in which it's going to finally decide will the veterans have their way, will they be able to stall the elevation of Rahul Gandhi to the post of a Congress president, or will finally Rahul have his way and will it be completely his team and a completely new look Congress?
Shri Rahul Gandhi has been granted leave of absence for a few weeks, after which he will return to resume his active participation in all matters of the party.
छुट्टी पे जो है तो ठीक है, क्योंकि जब कुछ काम रहता है तो परमिशन लेते हैं.
So there you go. That's the latest as far as the Congress camp is coming in. Rahul Gandhi going on a sabbatical. Moving on, this is a big relief coming in for the centre. The Supreme Court today cleared the decks for the spectrum auction to proceed as planned by the Department of Telecommunications. Do remember the auctions slated to begin on 4th of March. Exchequer hoping to raise 1 lakh crore rupees from this exercise. Now, while keeping the concerns of telcos seeking license extension in mind, the Supreme Court directed the government to proceed with the auctions beginning March 4th. Ashmit Kumar now joining us with those details. Ashmit, take us to the highlights of the Supreme Court ruling.
Well, clearly the Supreme Court, by way of its order today, has cleared the decks for the spectrum auctions to proceed as per the DOT's terms and conditions beginning March 4th. That's the takeaway. But, of course, there's also a caveat. I'll come to that in just a bit. But just to share some perspective with our viewers, the three telcos, Bellwethers, Bharti Idea, Vodafone, had secured their telecom licenses back in 95. It was a 20-year license due to expire in 2015. And logically, the concern that these telcos raised before the Supreme Court was that they've made significant investments in these circles and that they stand to lose out on their investments should the auctions be allowed to continue. Now, of course, this was rebutted by the DOT, which argued that, in fact, the Supreme Court has held in various cases that these national resources need to be distributed in a fair, transparent and a market-linked process referring to auctions. Now, keeping in mind these various contentions, the Supreme Court has cleared the decks. The auctions shall proceed. But at the same time, they have also added a caveat that the contentions of these telcos will remain open. So clearly, the telcos have managed to stick their foot out, keeping the door from closing on them. The contention that they have raised, rather the submission that they have made, is that they're agreeable to a situation of media solution of sorts, that they have agreed to pay the market link prices for their individual respective circles. So that's, of course, out in the open for now. We'll have to wait for proceedings post the auctions, but for now the auctions will go on course. That is, of course, from March 4th onwards. Back to you.
Ashmit, before you go, it's been a real busy day for you in court as always. I believe the Supreme Court has now constituted a special bench, particularly for tax disputes. So just tell us, is this bench going to be hearing all tax-related cases or only the few high-profile ones?
Well, this is a dedicated bench that will be hearing tax disputes, both for direct and indirect taxes, and it will be sitting on a daily basis, taking up all matters that are currently pending before the Apex Court, all direct and indirect tax-related matters. And just to give some perspective to our viewers, let's just throw some numbers across. A total pendency of 65,000 suits is what we see in the Supreme Court. Of these, nearly 11,000 of them are cases pertaining to direct and indirect taxation, and that was the cause of concern here. The Supreme Court, by its own admission, agrees that there's a huge amount of money that's locked in, that the time that it takes necessarily creates more confusion in the minds of taxpayers, and on account of that we understand that a special bench has been constituted. We're not sure about the composition yet. We're yet to get more clarity on that, but what we do know for now is that this bench will begin operations, will begin hearing these matters from March 9th, and that they will be sitting on a daily basis. So that, of course, coming as a big relief. Reaching out to various councils and tax experts, they have welcomed this move, observing that this will add to greater certainty and greater clarity in terms of speedy adjudication of tax disputes. So definite positive coming in as far as tax clarity and tax regime is concerned. Back to you.
Ashwin, running out of time, so very quickly, do we know what kind of cases these will be like? Is there a figure that's involved?
Well, the figures, of course, will run into several crores, of course, but for now, we're not, they haven't shared a figure with us, but what they have shared with us is that a huge amount of money is locked in, which brings in a big deal of uncertainty, and hence the need for a specialized, dedicated bench for hearing such matters.
Okay, so we don't know the limit beyond which the special bench will be looking into this, but that could be seen as a big booster shot as far as investor sentiment also goes. Thanks, Ashmit, for joining us with those details. Now, the probe into the alleged case of corporate espionage continues. The Delhi police today detained another energy consultant for removing official documents from the coal and power ministries. The suspect, named Lokesh, allegedly sold documents to other energy consultants, including former journalists Santanu Saikia and Prayas Jain, who were arrested last week. Lokesh has been sent to police custody for 5 days. The Patiala court also extended the custody of the first set of accused arrested for leaking information over the weekend that was from documents from the Petroleum Ministry. They will be in custody till the 6th of March. Sylvie.
Okay, let's move on then. Indian tax authorities have issued summons to global banking giant HSBC. The bank's Swiss subsidiary is facing a multinational probe after leaked files exposed how it helped the wealthy across the world evade taxes. The bank also says that it fears significant monetary penalties in Europe. The bank's stock slipped around 5% in trade today after a 17% drop in profits. The CEO also admitted to misconduct at its Swiss arm and apologized. Well, back home, last week was a roller coaster ride for Jindal Steel and Power at the coal auctions. The company successfully retained the richest mine for the lowest price, but also missed out on one block. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, JSPL MD and CEO Ravi Uppal has said that he hoped to stage a big turnaround in profits by capitalizing on the Garipalma coal blocks.
There are a couple of things about this block. Number one, is a very large block with about 185 million tons of extractable reserves. We know this block quite well because we have been operating there for nearly a decade, and we are right at the pit head. So, they actually, when we talk about 108 rupees, many people seem to misunderstand. They think, this is the price we have to, at which we are buying it. Is actually, this is the amount we have to pay to the government. And in addition to this, we have our mining costs, we have our...
Yeah, but it's still much cheaper than everything else that's been sold in the auction so far, sir.
Well, if you look at the list of the blocks which are auctioned, you break it into two categories. Number one, the power and the non-power blocks. Sure. The power blocks are the one where you have to go for the lowest rate,
right.
Whereas for the other ones, the highest rate.
Right.
Power blocks typically, if you look at the trend, they were much larger in their total extractable reserves. Whereas in the industrial side, the blocks were anywhere between 6 million to 45-50 million tons. So therefore, the average rate the non-power sector could pay was much higher. Whereas the power, the pressure is that you have to reduce the tariff.
Because you can't pass it on, yeah.
You can't pass it on.
Yeah.
So therefore, we think that the price that we paid is just about the right, maybe a little on the excess side.
Why is it that nobody else wanted these blocks?
Well, they wanted. They actually wanted, if you remember that there were as many as 11 parties which which participated, out of which they shortlisted about 6 of them. So, and all the big names were there. But then everybody understood that, that for them, there's no road infrastructure. There is no other infrastructure for them to take out the coal. They have to build it up again. And there's not even a railhead there. So they have to
it didn't make commercial sense.
Didn't make commercial sense. For them, cost of logistics really mind-boggling. Number one. The second thing, which is very important now, that this mine already has a mining rate which is 6.5 million tons, and it's an operating mine. This means the day you take it over,
you can pretty much
you have to start producing 6.5 million tons. And if you don't have a use for this one, you have to give this to Coal India. And therefore, you're a loser on every account. I think everybody worked out as to how much they will tend to lose if they take such a big block with so much a mining rate.
Okay.
If their end user projects are not fully set up.
Okay, so that's as far as the big win is concerned. But let's talk about the loss, because you lost the Gare Palma 4x1 block, if I've got that correct. That was a commercial decision, you're saying? You've decided that it was not worth bidding higher than what the block finally went for?
That exactly was the case. That we have been running that block for more than 10 years. And we knew what are the kind of extractable reserves are there. And, what's the calorific value. And keeping all this in mind, we thought it's just worth up to a certain amount. And there's no point going beyond that. We also have a view. We believe that in about 2 years' time, the coal situation in this country is going to really ease off. And because Coal India is also parallelly trying to ramp up their output. And they're going to be in the market with so much coal. So there's no point tying yourself with a block with a commitment of 25 to 30 years at such exorbitant rates. So let me say that we took a business decision which we thought will serve us well in the long run.
But how does it impact you in the short term?
Well, in the short term, there are still about 180 plus mines which are going to go for auction. There are certain among them which we are targeting, which we think will make a good business sense for us. And I'm quite optimistic that we will home in with the quantities that we need.
Well, you win some, you lose some, but there JSPL sounding pretty satisfied with how they've performed in the coal auction so far.
And the government should be happy. It's getting its stance vindicated, at least as far as the CAG report goes.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks so much for watching.